I'm going to talk about some things that taking us out of some of the tech and the really sophisticated AI types of things that I think we're all very much focused on it, but also kind of taking us back to the core of why we are in this space to begin with. And I want to start out with sort of a question here. I'm assuming, this being a BioPharma summit forum, that most people here are in the pharma space or in the healthcare arena, and most of us are probably in the commercial space. Is that true? Like, show of hands, mostly in the commercial areas? Okay, that makes sense. But I assume that you're also very familiar with the drug value chain as a part of this. Obviously, the whole reason we have drugs on the market is because it starts very early in the lab. Scientists are in there identifying molecules and clinical interventions that they test. Things that show promise then go into the clinical trial phases. And from there to, if we can establish the safety and efficacy, we start to prepare how we're going to manufacture and distribute this intervention, whether it's a pill or an infusion or some other modality. Regulatory and pricing come into play. How are we going to position this in the market from a pricing standpoint? How does it fit within the confines of regulations? And then if it passes all these tests and phases, it gets into the market and is commercialized and sold, and hopefully for a return on the investment so that we can take those funds and put them back into the innovation space. And this process takes a really, really long time, 10 to 15 years. And I think we all know that a very, very small percentage of these interventions that start in the lab actually make it to market. And there's a lot of money involved, and it's a very costly endeavor from beginning to end. But I would also say that for those of us in this commercial area, this is where a lot of the voice of the customer, insight, understanding, and application comes from traditionally. So as we're looking to position the product with patients, the right patients, the right physicians who will be prescribing, we do a lot of insights to understand their motivations, behaviors, and uses. Am I hearing like a horse go off? Like, that is a weird. What is that? Is it telling me something? I know. I'm like, is it telling me something? Am I supposed to do something at that point? Or okay, that's really weird. So anyway, so this is traditionally where we see a lot of the voice of the patient come into play. Would you agree with that? I mean, I think in this space we're listening to our customers. But this is also where I would argue that we have a huge opportunity, the people in this room have a huge opportunity to infuse this across all areas of the pharmaceutical value chain, or the drug manufacturing value chain, because it's not traditionally what these other areas are really centered around or thinking about the way we do from a marketing standpoint. But if we do bring to life the patient journey, the experience of living with a disease state or a condition on an everyday basis, and bringing it back to all of these different areas, we might have an opportunity to shrink the time to market, bridge these gaps from very, very beginning to very, very end, and move things through the value chain more quickly because we're working on solutions that truly meet the need of the patient. So with that, I'd just like to say, again, I'm Amy West. I'm going to be talking about how we do that today. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for over 25 years. I've been with Novo Nordisk the last 15 years, and I have been involved in this innovation space for quite a while now. And obviously, digital is a big focus when we talk about innovation. But today, I'm talking about another area of innovation that my team is very involved in, which is about relationships and changing the way we engage with our internal and external customers. And a lot of what my team has been doing is not only looking and experimenting with new sort of digital or technology interventions, but we're also working really, really closely with our early R&D areas to start to help these really super smart scientists who are very focused in the lab on medical solutions, helping them understand what it's like to be a patient with this disease, this condition, understanding the patient journey, understanding patient personas, and some of these tools and methodologies that we use on the commercial side to help them as they are progressing with the areas of exploration, the selection process, and in some instances, if we're looking to buy an asset, there are many out there. Which ones do we invest in? But knowing what the customer experience is and what the true unmet need for the patient is, it helps guide some of the decision making. So in order to do that, I would say to start to infuse this notion across these other areas of the value chain, there are sort of two key fundamental concepts involved. And one starts with Susan, or somebody like Susan. And from the pharmaceutical standpoint, we see Susan as a patient with Parkinson's disease. We talk to her that way, we treat her that way. But Susan doesn't see herself like that. Susan sees herself as the grandmother of 4 grandkids with one on the way. She's super excited because she gets to babysit every now and then. She lost her husband about 1.5 years ago, and she's adjusting to everyday life without her partner. And it's been tough, but she's moving into a better place in this new chapter of her life. And as a part of that, she's thinking about downsizing from her large family home to a condo and a retirement community where she'll have more people to engage with, and it'll be much easier for her from a social standpoint and just an encouragement standpoint. She's also a bridge life master. She loves to play bridge, and she's going to start to actually teach some classes, which is super exciting for her. And she's an avid reader, loves her mystery novels. And she has Parkinson's disease, but that's kind of not the thing that she loves to think about on a 24/7 basis. So we have to remember that, again, like as in this space, we need to see Susan as a person, not a patient. And it's really important that I think on the marketing side, the commercial side, we've gotten much, much better with that. But we need to infuse that to the earlier phases of the drug discovery process to ensure that we're solving the right problem for Susan as we progress. The second notion I would like to ground in is something that I think, is it Damon? You were on the last panel, but this idea of solving the right problem. This is a quote from Peter Diamandis, who is the co-founder and executive chairman of Singularity University. And Singularity University is a futurist forum that focuses people, great thinkers, thinking about how do we solve these global world wicked problems, healthcare and equity in healthcare being one of them. And he always says, become enamored of the problem, not the solution. Because if we don't understand what we're solving for and the root cause of it, we're not necessarily going to bring something to the table that has real value. And Damon, as you said, don't come to the table with a solution looking for a problem, because there's going to be less value there. You're going to be less successful with that. So those two key things, remember the patient, or the person as a patient, remember the person, not the patient, and become enamored of the problem, not the solution. So going back to the value chain, so how do we start to embed this understanding of what life is like for somebody with dealing with an illness or chronic disease or whatever earlier in the process and throughout the value chain? So there are many things that we can do, but one area in the drug discovery phase is, again, as I mentioned before, start to bridge the gap. As people in the commercial space, build relationships with your R&D areas. I mean, how many of the folks here are actually doing that right now, or having these conversations? I think what you'll find, that there are a few, because when we started doing it a few years ago, it was a little suspect. There was a little like, why are you doing this? But now we've actually got them reaching out to us, and being included in workshops and things like that, because they really appreciate that insight, and it really does add a lot more understanding to the direction that they want to go in. So there's a lot of value there. So that's a very easy thing to do. You can start doing it tomorrow. Just start to reach out. But I think what's really one of the values of that is, the sometimes the chief complaint from a person, with managing a disease or a condition, isn't as obvious as it might seem, and the approach that the organization might be taking might be going after that obvious thing, but really isn't the root issue. And if we go back to someone like Susan, who has Parkinson's disease, there is a great example or anecdote from UCB, who was focusing on Parkinson's disease medications, and they'd been very focused on the tremor or the shaking that is present many times with Parkinson's disease. But as they started to really work and understand the patients with Parkinson's disease and talking with them and engaging and hearing and getting insights from them, the feedback they got was, yes, the tremors, the shaking, it's a problem, but I can actually manage that pretty well. The things that are really disruptive to me are my sleep disruptions and my gastrointestinal issues. They affect me every single day. If you can solve for that, that will be a game changer and it will change the quality of my life. That is what I would really love help with. And UCB started to focus in some of these areas that were the chief complaint of the individual, not something that they thought was a chief complaint, just because they could kind of see the physical trembling that goes on. So again, it's important for these early areas to really understand what it's like to live with a disease state on a daily basis, to give them insight into how they want to focus their research and their selection. When we go to the clinical development aspect, the clinical development area, I think we're seeing a lot of really interesting things going on here, where you're starting to see more co-creation with the patients in the trial design, in addition to the regulators or the trial sponsors. So that co-creation is highly valued, especially in the rare disease space. And by doing that, you're creating an opportunity for a more successful completion of the trial in a real world setting, because you're able to create something that is going to be more convenient for the person to engage in, and they're going to hopefully see the benefit by, through their engagement, their active engagement in this. And so if you can create this experience that they feel a part of, that's actually going to work for the way they live their life in a real world way, you're going to have greater success to get people into the trial and keep them to trial completion. In manufacturing and distribution, I think what is really interesting, what I'm seeing in this space is Lilly Direct. With Eli Lilly has their new Lilly Direct platform. From a distribution standpoint, they've created a way to access medications for obesity, diabetes, and migraine that is very convenient for the individual user. They have listened to their customers who've been very frustrated in the healthcare space with access challenges, with being able to get a prescription and actually getting the product to, having to go to a pharmacy to get it. They've created a very easy experience to call, get a prescription through telehealth support, get additional wraparound coaching support if needed, and then have the medication delivered right to your door. It's going to be interesting to see where this goes. There's a lot of, this is very new. It removes the middleman from all of that, which is really interesting. And I think that there are going to be some hiccups along the way, but what I really love about it is that they have listened to their customer. They have listened to what is annoying and frustrating about the healthcare system, and they're trying to figure out a way to get products to people who need them as quickly and as easily as possible. And in the regulatory and pricing space, this can be a bit of a challenging area because of just by virtue of what it is, but back in 2012, the FDA created this, it's called the Patient-Focused Drug Development Initiative. And this initiative sponsors public forums where they bring patients in to talk about certain disease states. But the idea is to really understand from the patient's perspective what it's like to live with a disease and how they're managing it, and taking that information and putting it back into taking that knowledge and sharing it back with other organizations, whether it's pharma or healthcare in general, but even when they think about the regulatory environment, this insight and understanding. And there are two key objectives with these forums. One is to understand the significant symptoms that the person is experiencing with their disease state and how it's impacting their life day to day. And then secondly, what are they doing and how are they treating this disease state as having to deal with this? And I think it's a really interesting way to have insight into the real world experience of people who are struggling and getting it from them and their perspective. And so these are public forums, so it's an opportunity to inform your organization of getting access to this or joining or participating or listening to these programs, whether it's your regulatory organization or even anywhere across the organization. They can listen into this very organic, real-time, real-world patient information. And then obviously in the commercial space, sales and marketing, this traditionally has been where the voice of the customer or the voice of the patient has really been, always a key focus for the insights and how we develop our messages and our campaigns and our interactions. But I think we can do a better job to do more listening through the social channels that we have out there, working with advocacy groups, as well as doing things like creating events at your organization where you're bringing patients in to talk to the organization and share their stories, and then also helping these people understand what the organization is doing, what your pharma company is focused on. And it creates that shared value and potential trust that I believe trust in this space has been a bit shaky, so it's a nice way to start to build up some of that trust and confidence. But again, I think it's a huge opportunity, and it's very, very easy from a commercial standpoint and those working in this space to bridge that gap across the entire value chain. We can be leaders to go back and work with individuals in these different areas to start to create that understanding, that insight, raise the value and the opportunity that we have by infusing this information that we use every day with our patient journeys, our personas, what have you, and getting it to these individuals who don't typically get to engage with it. And again, in theory, if we can do that, we might be able to shorten that time to market. We might be able to create solutions that are going to have greater value to our customers because we are truly designing for the unmet need in the market and providing that better quality of life for the individual, but also providing value and opportunity and ROI for the organization to continue to invest in innovation for the future. And again, just to close out, the two key fundamentals here are that Susan, or people like Susan, is a person, not a patient. We need to understand her holistically and what her experience is like to better meet her needs and become enamored of the problem, not the solution. We can't go at this with, this is our solution, where's the problem? It's got to be the other way around. And if we can do that, I think we can all design solutions that are going to better meet the needs of our customers and our organizational business. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. We've got a little bit of time before we move on to our next session for any questions. Anybody want to hop in and comment or discuss around the kind of end-to-end patient centricity approach? Jay.
Hi, Amy. You mentioned at the end of your presentation about engaging patient advocacy and getting them to come in and speak to your organization. I experienced a pushback when trying to get patients to come in to speak to the entire company about different conditions and their condition. What are some ways that you felt like you were able to get around that problem?
I think through some of the advocacy groups that we work with and talking with them, we also will sponsor patient forums and things like that, and creating that safe environment where they're going to feel like they're being heard and understood, and also letting them know that it's so important for us what their story is and what they have to say, because, you know, as an individual with a disease state or a chronic condition, you are the expert in this disease state. We are trying to solve for that, but we really need to understand what your experience is to find new and innovative ways to solve for that. And we can take the best guess we have, we can use the science, we can use technology to try to figure that out. But again, that what we think is the common complaint might not be. So, you know, making this customer group understand that we're doing this to try to better understand, to solve for better solutions, and create that trust. I think that they're, and also that co-creation mindset. I think that's also very helpful.
All right. Thank you, Amy. Any more questions or comments before we move on?